Thank you, Deputy. Now call on Deputy Pearse Doherty.
Minister, about this time last year, we were all told, we were asked to come to the Chamber, there was an important announcement to be made, and we were all told that the State had cobbled together an agreement that meant that we didn't pay the promissory note last year. And we were asked to applaud the government, to take you at face value, and that this was a great deal that was achieved on behalf of the Irish taxpayer. But as the mist faded and as the cobwebs were dusted away, what became very clear after divulging into what took place that time is the State did indeed pay back the ELA, paid the money to Anglo-Irish Bank or IBRC, that the Irish Central Bank got their money, and that the European Central Bank were satisfied that a certain amount of ELA was taken out of the system. The difference was that it was done through a convoluted approach where, if you put it in simple terms, the Minister went to Bank of Ireland for a loan of €3.1 billion, paid Anglo that money, and Anglo then paid the Central Bank, and the Central Bank disappeared the money. And now we're being asked at this late hour to come together and take, again, you at face value, that this is in the interest of the State. That don't really matter about, having the time to deal with the legislation, to read through it. The briefing that myself and other finance spokespersons and other TDs got earlier on wasn't concluded because we were called back to the Chamber. There were certain questions that couldn't be answered at that meeting, and we were asked not even to ask certain questions. So it's about taking this government at face value. And I think, through all of the leaks and all of the spin over the last number of weeks, but particularly over the last number of days and last number of hours, one thing is clear, that this government intends to pay every single last cent of the Anglo-Irish Promissory Note, totalling something in the region of €28 billion. So this year is part one of a plan, and there's a couple of other parts to follow in the later days if you get the call from Frankfurt that Frankfurt are indeed happy with your proposal. But what you're putting before us today, and what this will be spun as, is that we're winding up the toxic bank that was Anglo-Irish Bank. And there's no doubt there would be nobody happier in this chamber to see Anglo-Irish Bank disappear than myself and my party colleagues. But you're winding up the bank, Minister, but you're not winding up the debt. And that's where you critically fail in relation to your endeavours in relation to this legislation. This so-called debate is an affront. It's an affront to democracy, and it is an affront to people, the length and breadth of this state, who has suffered under austerity through your government and through the previous Fianna Fáil and the Green government. It is not appropriate that we would be asked to deal with such an important piece of legislation that deals with a bank that has assets and liabilities in excess of €40 billion, that gives the Minister wide-ranging powers to direct the liquidators to liquidate the bank in a certain way, that gives the Minister powers to direct NAMA to purchase the assets of IBRC, that continues in the question in terms of your speech, is that the guarantee, the ministerial guarantee that you refer to in your speech, is not the same as the promissory note. And I would like you to elaborate on this here. I understand that the ministerial guarantee that you're talking about is the comfort letters, or if you can call them letters, the comfort emails that were sent to the central bank at the time of the issuing of the ELA. And what you're saying in your speech is if the assets that NAMA, which will be directed by you to purchase from IBRC, don't realise the values, then you will also convert those comfort letters into reality, therefore the Minister paying out the shortfall. So not only are we on the hook for the promissory note, but those emails, those dodgy emails that were issued between the central bank and the late finance minister are now going to take full force if the state doesn't realise their assets and if there is a liability there. It has been raised earlier on about the workers, and there's no doubt about it, and I've been one of the loudest that have challenged the fact that IBRC continue to employ people such as the Chief Risk Officer at a payment, at a salary of €500,000. And nobody in this House, well, hopefully nobody on this side anyway, I believe, would shed any tears to see certain people being able to take less amount of money in IBRC. But there's 850 employees, about 850 employees in this state for working for IBRC. There's a couple of other in the area, about 150 others in different jurisdictions. And the vast majority of them aren't on anywhere near the salaries of the Chief Risk Officer. Yet they were informed today, in the year of 2013, the year we celebrate the centenary of the Great Lockout, 850 Irish employees were informed through Bloomberg that their jobs were gone. How can we stand over that? How can we stand over that? And Minister, I don't know how many times that we've asked for information as to what is happening with the Anglo-Irish Promissory Note. We were told that it was kept confidential. These are the way negotiations have to be kept. You didn't even inform your cabinet colleagues as to what was going on in relation to the deal. It was kept so tight. I'm not sure if the economic management team, the four wise men, were even aware of the details of it. But lo and behold, it all blows up in your face. A leak from the ECB appears in Bloomberg, and 12 o'clock midnight, we're rushed in here to pass legislation supposedly to protect the interests of the state. You've done such a great job of keeping it so tight that we've been forced to bring in emergency legislation at midnight. Now, Minister, maybe a bit of openness and transparency to allow us all, not only TDs that have a mandate to be here and represent the public, but people at home who you're asking to carry the burden of this promissory note should be informed a little bit more. And the information that you have parted to us in your opening remarks is absolutely disgraceful. You have given no idea why this is required at this point in time, why we need to bring forward this legislation in the early hours of the morning, why you want to ensure that none of us can properly parse this legislation before we're asked to sign it into law, why there is no opportunity for us to actually place amendments in terms of this legislation. And Minister, we need to learn the lessons of the past. This is the type of politics that Fianna Fáil practiced for far too long. This is the type of politics that lent us to constructing the Fianna Fáil Promissory Note. It was the late night meetings, forget about the legislation, take me at face value, I'm doing this to protect the interests of the state, and if you don't pull on the green jersey, then you're the bad boys here. You're the bad boys here because you're working against the interests of the state. So 5 years on, another government of different colours, the blue and red, comes together and they ask us to do exactly the same thing. Take you at face value. And you may say that, Deputy Howlett, but I can guarantee you that the vast majority of your own TDs have not read this legislation. And those who have read it, I would say very few understand the consequences of it. Understand the consequences of it.
Sorry, would you please?
It was agreed. The Cabinet concluded at 10:10 this evening, and it agreed to bring this legislation to the floor. Now, is this real political reform? Is this the type of direction that we were promised before the last election? None of us know the full implications of this bill. None of us know the full implications of this bill. But what we do know is the powers that are contained within the bill are wide-ranging. What we do know is that this is part of a number of steps that the Minister and the Government want to introduce to ensure, not to ensure that we have a write-down in relation to the promissory note, but to ensure that my generation, the generation of my children, and my children's children will be paying back the debts of bankers and criminals in Anglo-Irish Bank for many years into the future. And that is the truth. Section 17 of this legislation.
Settle down, please.
Section 17 of this legislation.
Deputy, you have just 5 minutes left.
Section 17 of this bill. Section 17 of this bill allows the Minister, whenever and so often as the Minister thinks fit, to create and issue securities. So it's okay. We're asked today to give you, Minister Noonan, or any future minister, the power to issue long-term bonds in the name of the Irish people. There is nobody in our party who would object to Anglo-Irish Bank going into liquidation. But it should mean that the promissory note is not to be paid out. It should mean that the comfort letters that were issued by the previous minister is not to be paid out. You asked me about default. The head of the Department of Finance and his officials, in briefing us, told us what is going to happen tomorrow morning when you sign this into law is IBRC will default. That is what's going to happen. When you go into liquidation, IBRC defaults. Well, you need to talk to your minister, or your officials. IBRC defaults, but what happens is that the state picks up the tab. So the state picks up the tab in terms of the promissory note and in terms of the other debts and securities that are contained within this bank. And yet,
sorry, Deputy, would you... Deputy McCarthy, would you please refrain from shouting across the chamber? Allow the Deputy to finish. We don't need any assistance from there either.
Tacordia, our party Sinn Féin have been consistent on the issue of the promissory note. Consistent on the issue of the promissory note. And let the record show.
Sorry.
Let the record show that in 2011, Pat Rabbit, in 2000... Tacordia.
Ministers, would you please allow the debate? We've a short debate here and put out the shouting. Just let the Deputy finish his 3 minutes. Thank you.
Tacordia. In 2011, on the 31st of March, when Fine Gael and the Labour government issued a €3.1 billion cheque to Anglo-Irish Bank, the only voices in this chamber to raise the issue were Sinn Féin voices. The first vote and the only vote before today on the issue of the promissory note was a Sinn Féin motion that was debated over 2 days. Indeed, there wasn't even a vote in this chamber when Fianna Fáil's government and Micheál Martin sat at the cabinet table and not once, but more than once at the cabinet table approved the issuing of the promissory note. But not once was a vote issued on the Dáil. It was Sinn Féin that put this issue on the agenda.
Please proceed. Thank you. Please proceed. Would you please proceed? Thank you. Please proceed.
There is a need, Tacordia, for serious factual information to be put on the record by the Minister. With respect, lads, we're given 15 minutes. You have voted to guillotine this piece of legislation. Please afford me the opportunity to speak. Go back to the bar.
I'm sorry. This is the last time I'm going to ask somebody to stop shouting. The next time you'll be going out that door, okay? Or that door, whichever you prefer. And I mean it. Thank you.
Tacordia, this House and every TD in it and the public at home deserve to know what is going on. We're looking at live blogs in RTE. We're following Bloomberg. We're following Reuters. We're getting the leaks from the ECB, from the Department of Finance. We're told that it's bonds that will be issued over a 27-year maturity. We're told that assets will go to NAMA. We're told that powers will be devolved here and there. We're told that the ECB were supposed to agree this deal at dinner today. But the Minister still has not stood up and said what this means. Will this mean an easier budget for the people of this state next year? When we asked the Troika last week that if we were to receive a deal on the banking debt, and if the promissory note wasn't to be paid out, would that mean a reduction in the adjustment that would have to be made? And the Troika indicated that they would reclassify it and look at it as a windfall. And any savings that could be made would be used to write down debt. Now, I hope that that isn't the case. That is what the Troika led the Sinn Féin delegation to believe. There is an onus on you, Minister, to spell out to people who have suffered for far too long through your policies of austerity what this means. Tell them in black and white terms, do you expect them, their children and their children's children to pay off the debts of Anglo-Irish Bank and IBRC? Or are you going to stand up for Irish interests and vote and call on the ECB to allow a write-down of this debt? This legislation is a precursor to having future generations of children pay a debt that is not theirs. And for those reasons...
Deputy, will you resume your seat? Thank you.